Over 48 hours, we've been witness to history in some of the most unstable parts of the world. First, Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi taken out, a 42-year reign over in a few chaotic moments. Now, news from the commander-in-chief that all American troops in the Middle East will be home for the holidays. But already there are critics. Civil war will soon follow, some say. Others suggest that US contractors will proceed on the ground unprotected. And perhaps the sharpest criticism of all, levied today by Senator John McCain, is that clearing Iraq of American soldiers is the #1 priority of Iran. For more now, I'm joined by Robin Wright, a joint fellow at the US Institute of Peace, Woodrow Wilson Center, and the author of Rock the Kasbah, Rage and Rebellion Across the Islamic World. Robin, given the sectarian nature of Iraq, isn't this action simply going to encourage Iran in the east to cross that border and start, and won't this kind of give grist to a lunatic like Mahmoud Ahmadinejad?
Well, remember that Iran and Iraq fought the grisliest modern Middle East war. I spent a lot of time covering that war in the 1980s, and this was very costly for both sides, over 1 million casualties. The Iranians have wanted Saddam Hussein out of power. They've wanted allies in Baghdad, and they've worked very hard to ensure that the Americans left, seeming at least to some people in the region, with their tails between their legs, that they didn't accomplish all that they had wanted. But the Iranians are not foolish enough to want to send thousands of troops across that border now. There is a strong sense of nationalism in both countries. There are deep ethnic divide that dates back centuries. Iran really wants a secure border, whether it's Iraq on one side or Afghanistan on the other. And yes, they want the United States to go because they feel threatened and have long worried that the United States was taking aim at Tehran next. But I'm not convinced that the Iranians are going to use this as a means to get troops inside Iraq.
But given the majority Shia population in both nations, what do you think this will mean for minority groups? I'm thinking of Sunni Muslims. I'm also thinking of a remnant of Christians who live in Iraq.
All the countries in the Middle East with sectarian differences are facing that challenge right now, whether it's Iraq in the aftermath of the U.S. withdrawal or Syria, as you find protesters demanding the ouster of Bashar Assad. There is a sense that these sectarian issues are going to define the region over the next decade, and they are very troublesome. The interesting thing about Iraq is that there was a lot of speculation about whether it would break up into the 3 natural parts that you identified in the aftermath of Saddam Hussein's ouster. And the interesting thing is that the sense of Iraqi nationalism has so far prevailed. That may be more trouble down the road. There may be deeper differences, but now that all people have the vote and they realize that they can take to the polls their demands, vote for people into office, into parliament in a way they couldn't under Saddam Hussein, that there are alternative outlets. And, every country with sectarian differences, ethnic differences, faces challenges.
But, Robin, do you really have confidence in Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, a man routinely described as corrupt?
Oh, I'm not saying that at all. I think there are a lot of things wrong with this particular government, particularly Prime Minister Maliki. He's emerging more as a strong man than as a Democrat, and that's very worrisome. I'm not at all endorsing this government or its ability to hold the country together. I think it's more the will of the Iraqi people that will determine what happens next. But I think that's important to focus on. It's what the Iraqi people want, not necessarily just the leadership at the moment, and not necessarily Iranians. So I think we give we kind of fall back into stereotypes when we worry about the Iranians literally absorbing Iraq next.
If you withdraw then and take an overview of the region, and your book does this brilliantly, what's your sense of what this will mean for the region? Is this progress?
Well, I think the American presence has been increasingly unpopular in the wider Arab world, and there will be many who welcome the fact that the United States is pulling out its forces. I think there's a sense that in the region that American policy has changed from a decade ago when the United States was using military force to chart its aims, and that today it's playing a background role, whether it's in NATO's role in Libya or in the kind of resolutions the United States is trying to cobble together with allies at the United Nations against Syria, that there is a very different American role today. And I think that's widely welcomed. Yes, there will be a nervousness among some of the minorities in Iraq about their security, but the Americans weren't necessarily the guarantee of their safety either.
Robin Wright, as ever, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.